Today I'm going to, as Natalie says, I'm going to show you how to make very simple cameras without the need of a camera, and also sort of projectors and things that use lights in different ways. And we're utilizing household waste materials, so things like shoe boxes, packets, tin cans, things that are readily available, tin foil. If you don't have those sort of materials to hand, don't worry about it today. This is more about me showing you how to make these things, and then maybe you can follow it up at a later date. And I would say as well that I welcome any questions. If you've got any questions or anything that isn't clear, either during the course of the workshop, but also afterwards, if things aren't, you need some more information, then please do get in touch. So the cameras that I use in my everyday, you'd have seen a couple of shots from a couple of my series that I've done. I travel around the world working on very personal projects, a lot of which are to do with my own emotional state and my own mental health. I have a bipolar condition, so I sort of use photography and my love of nature and the environment to sort of manage my well-being. And the sort of cameras that I would use vary a lot, but the two images that you would have seen today, I would have used this camera. So this is a large format camera, not very expensive. You can pick these things up relatively cheaply now. And it uses sheet film. And this is the sort of format of the film that I will use in my production. And the sheet of film goes in a holder and goes into the back of here, and the light comes through the lens and is exposed. So it's a very simple contraption. Looks very complicated. It's not. It's very robust, and it's a very sort of, it comes with me everywhere, all over the world. And I love actually using it because of the way that I work. And I've always used cameras through my practice, both analog and digital. But what we're going to create is almost more sort of, I would say, akin to something like this. You may be familiar with one of these cameras. It's a 35mm film camera. And all it is it's a camera body. So this is the receptacle that the film would go in, but also has a lens and the lens cap. And those sort of simple components put together enable us to take photographs. Now, obviously, there are very more complicated ways of using the camera by opening and shutting the apertures on the lens and things, but you don't really need to get into it. I think for today's purpose, what this is going to be mimicked by what I will make for you and what you can easily make at home. If you're interested in how lenses work, here's a Whopper. I don't know if you can see where the lens opens and shuts, where you can actually utilize this sort of, can you see you there? That's how our eyes work. This is how we control the amount of light getting into our eyes, and that's what these lenses on cameras do. But we will make a lens today in a simple contraption, which is a drawing pin, effectively. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's get into how to make a pinhole camera. And for this pinhole camera, you can use photographic paper and photographic film. Now, if you have not got sort of photographic paper to hand, don't worry. We've been kindly sponsored by Ilford Photo, and they're going to be supplying us with materials. And as I go through the process of making this camera, I'll explain to you about how we're going to enable you to have some of this material, and then you can either process it yourself if you have access to it, or you can package it up and send it back to me, and I'll process it for you on your behalf. Okay, so don't worry about this too much at the moment, but we have got some materials. So what I recommend for this is actually a Tetrapak. Normally the long life and the sort of not the fresh Tetrapaks are ideal because they're lined inside with a silver foil. Now this is a recyclable material, and what I tend to do is I tend to reuse them, and I make them for schools and things like that. We use a bulk, we get lots of these and we make them into cameras. So the first thing you've got to do is obviously rinse it out, make sure that it's empty and it's dry inside. And then what you'll do to try and transform it into this, you'll follow very simple instructions that I'll lead you through now, okay? Can you see inside this pack here? It's got a silver foil liner, and that creates a very light, tight environment. And that's very important. In anything that you're going to make that I show you, you've got to make sure that it's light tight, because you're needing to control the amount of light going inside the actual receptacle, the body of the camera. Just as you would in a camera that you would load film into, you have to make sure there's no light leaks, that there's no sort of gaps, or that there's nothing left open. So you have to make sure. So get one of these. Tools that you're going to need: craft knife, pen, ruler, and a pair of scissors. And depending on the object that you're using, lots of tape. Black tape is preferable because it assists the process of blocking the light out. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to go quiet while I'm doing this so I don't chop my fingers off. I'm going to find, from the overhead camera, you might see, I'm going to try and find the center of this bit of the box. So all I do is I just measure the center. This is where your actual lens will go, what we call where the pinhole will go. Okay, and you just mark that up. And what I also do is I do all the other markings I need, because it makes it easier to sort of maneuver around the box while I'm cutting everything. I'll make a small line here, here. What you end up with is this sort of square within the rectangle. This is the area where the pinhole will go. Before I do that, before I cut it out, what I'm going to do is actually draw a line all the way around. Because we'll need to cut this off. We'll need to cut this top bit off to be able to allow us to get the actual paper inside. But first, I'm going to cut out my square. Doesn't matter if it falls inside. What I would say is hang on to this, because we will need it as we go on. The next thing to do is to effectively cut our lid off, which will allow us access. If you have any questions, just fire away. I'll try and multi-skill and not cut myself and talk at the same time. So, we've now got two parts to the carton. Take out the lid, this piece. Keep this, because this will become your lens cap. Okay, don't throw this away. Hang on to it for now. We'll put it to one side. Okay. I obviously didn't wash this out good enough. I'm just going to chuck it outside. Hang on. Water the garden. So you've got two parts, one with a hole in cut out. This hole will become the aperture for fitting our lens onto. Now, some people use aluminium cans to cut out because it's very rigid, but you can simply use a piece of silver foil to do this, okay? So you need to cut a square slightly larger than the one that we have here, okay? So slightly bigger than that.
Steve, I've just got a quick question.
Yeah.
Just about the cutting of the Tetrapak. The square that you cut out, did that, you just kind of, was that any particular measurements, or did you just sort of? No,
it's about, I don't know, what's that, about 3 centimeters, three centimeters?
Mm-hmm.
A 2 centimeter square. It's just large enough to be able to, you know, we will get the pen will go through the center of the foil that will overlap this piece of the aperture of the hole. If I show you on the overhead, I'll show you what I mean, because effectively the foil has to cover that hole, and you need to make it large enough so that you can tape it down. And I'll show you how I do that. So you can see from above, I'll make the foil slightly larger than the hole. The hole doesn't have to be huge. It could be 2-3 centimeters. Don't make it too big because the silver foil will become very flimsy then. Okay, so keep it quite tight.
And Steve, just a quick other question.
Yeah.
This is obviously you're using like a sort of milk carton type. So if it was a different sort of dimensions of the Tetrapak, you'd have to kind of calibrate where the cuts go?
Yes, you would. I mean, depending on what you're using, I was going to quickly show you one with a tin can. And that's a bit more complicated because you would need to drill a hole in it. Beer cans and things like that are actually easy because you can get a drawing pin through the skin of a tin can. But if you use a beer can or a soft drinks can, but if you're using a tin can such as this, you do need to drill a hole onto it. So yeah, you're right. It just depends on the actual receptacle. I've also got one out of a chocolate box. So it all depends on what the receptacle is, and that's a really relevant point because people often get confused over the exposure that they should make in a camera. Our cameras that we have on our phones and everything like that make those decisions for us. Whereas we've always got to make a decision on how long the exposure will be. And there's an issue where obviously it's like imagine this: you're standing in a garden holding a torch in the dark. If somebody's close to you, they're affected by the torchlight a lot. The further they move away from you, the less they're affected by the torchlight. But the torchlight strength remains the same. It doesn't change. So what you have to do, imagine you've got your pinhole at one end and you've got your piece of paper or your film or something at this end. The further it moves away from that pinhole, i.e. the bigger the box you put it in, the less effective the light will be on it. So you have to create longer exposures. So I hope that simplifies it a little bit. I mean, it makes it sort of sense. The bigger the object you put your paper in, the further away it will be from the pinhole, and therefore the longer exposure you'll make. But don't worry, we've got an exposure calculator which is easily you can go on a search engine, you can easily download it, and I will come to that once I've actually made the camera on how to make an exposure. But it is worth remembering about the size of the receptacle that you use. I've used dustbins, I've used all sorts of things effectively, but you do have to take that into consideration. So let's go back to we have our little bit I've cut out, and I have a piece of silver foil which is slightly larger. I hope you can see that than the actual piece of cardboard. Now that is going to fit over the top of the hole. Okay. Now don't be tempted to place it on top and try and tape it down. The best thing to do, I would say, would be to put it flat on the work surface and actually utilize the strength of the work surface when you're taping it. So just tape it slightly like this all the way around. The less creases in the tape, the better. Otherwise you could end up with okay, can you see that? I'll pick it up. What you end up with your silver foil attached to the tape. And what you do is you get your aperture and you roughly place the taped silver foil over the hole. Effectively, you've created a lens cover. You created a cover that now blocks the light out. And just look inside, and just gently firm it down. Make sure that it's sealed all the way around. Okay, so that's what you end up with. Next, exciting bit, you create your lens. So we need a method of actually allowing light into the camera. And we do that by taking a drawing pin, I'm not sure, a very small pin 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, and very, very gently just create a very clean hole in the middle of the silver foil. I'm not sure if you can see that.
Just about.
So that yeah, I can just about see it as well. My varifocals on. So that's you having made your receptacle, your camera body. You've made your lens. You've got your lens cap. So what you do with the lens cap is, again, you take another piece of tape, place it half on, half off, like that. And what this is like a flip lid. It and what I do is I often will just cut so that the edges are clean. Allows the flap to lift more easily, like that. Then simply place it over the top what you have, or should have, is your lens cap. Okay, so when you take it to wherever you're going and you're putting it outside, you hold this down until you're ready, and then you lift it and you bend it back, and then it will make the exposure. And then when you're finished, close it back down again, and off you go. Next thing to do is to make some space. Don't be tempted to just put some paper or the film inside. What you often do is it falls over and can get obstructed. So what I tend to do is make a little roll of tape like this, and I put it on the opposite side of the lens, because that's the side that the you see. So it's the opposite side of the pinhole, because that's where the photographic paper is going to go, and you can make sure that it'll actually hold it in place while you're sort of finding your location and that sort of thing. Otherwise it could fall over and get damaged. And then simply put your lid on. That's a camera, that's a pinhole camera. The light will come in through the hole on the front, be exposed onto the paper on the back, and you know, when you're done, you just take it back inside, you take the lid off, take the paper out and process it. Now, let's look at really quickly at a couple of points, one of which is exposures. I mentioned briefly about, you know, larger objects require a longer exposure, you know, etc. And it can put a lot of people off because they feel that it's hard to judge, you know, and through the process of experimentation and gaining more experience, it can work your way through quite a lot of materials. So what Ilford Photo kindly did was they created this thing. Now this is easily downloadable from websites, from Ilford's website, and just if you go to search engine and look for a pinhole exposure calculator. These things I find are massively invaluable. I used to, when I'm using cameras like this one, I've known it so well over the years. I know exactly when looking at a location what the average exposure will be. I don't have to use a meter. I don't have to use things like that. And that's not because I feel like I'm any sort of clever clogs. It's because I just learned how these lenses operate and what lighting conditions, and I've just sort of done that over years. But with pinhole cameras, particularly these DIY ones, you are experimenting in a way, and therefore it can be quite a challenge to work out what that exposure might be. So what they've done is they've created this template. It has 3 circles on it. The first one that you would cut out, so I just dropped everything, when you figure that, is cut out the big one. May as well. And what this does, if you look around it, it will show you lengths of exposure from 1/4000th of a second up until 8 hours, which when you think of some pinhole cameras, this, you can have very long exposures on it, depending on the materials and depending on the lighting conditions. So it gives you lengths of time of exposure, and that's the first part. The second part is, look at this green one. So for those of you that are familiar with photographic film and paper, they have what's called a sort of an ISO rating. Now that rating measures their the light, the exposure to light. How fast they will sort of fog and what their fog rate and things like that is. So basically, they will all have a different rating. And darkroom papers are a lot slower than films. So this just gives you a variety of different speeds. The paper that we were going to be commonly using is this Ilford paper, which is a positive paper, and it gives you a direct positive. So there's no need for making internegatives and all that kind of thing. You put this into your camera, a positive will come out when you process it. And it is a very, very slow rating, which means that you can pretty much take it out in daylight, which is what I'm going to do, and put it in a camera. I mean, that's a rating of 3. If you think about normal analog films for cameras, they have a rating around about 100 to 400 or 800. So imagine something that's got a rating of 3. It's very, very slow rated material, and therefore doesn't fog very easily. So it's great for using in pinhole cameras. The third one is an exposure. This basically pulls the two of these elements together. This one has you'll see a little nick in it. So what happens is these work together in tandem. Now, if you can see, if I just show you on here, can you see we've got sunny, partially sunny, cloudy, sunlight, and nighttime. For our purposes, these are perfect. You really don't have to think about these other ones. You can look outside or wherever you are and go, right, it's cloudy. So I'm going to use, or partially cloudy, I'm going to use this one here. And what I do is I take my green one and I put up the arrow on the partially cloudy sign. It's all I have to do. Very simple. Don't have to worry about anything else. What I have done is I've highlighted the number 3 because that is the speed of the paper that I would be using with you. So what I do is I take the top one and I place that on top of the 3 where the slot is. Now, what you'll see on here is a red arrow. And what you're looking for is where that red arrow sits against the blue of that one. And it's currently telling me, based on today's conditions, using that paper, I would make a 15-minute exposure. And it's that quite clear, I think, make it as simple, as straightforward as I can for you. We're looking at a cloudy day. The paper that we use has a speed setting of 3. And therefore, where that red arrow is, my exposure is going to be about 15 minutes. So that's an average. But Tim at Possible Rooms and I did an experiment, and we were experimenting with the paper, and I got him to do a variety of things using a Tetrapak. And what we found, you'll see this is Tim's, one of Tim's images. We found that the exposures in the Tetrapak, because the film is so close to the front of the camera, we actually would have, if it says 15 minutes, we would have needed 7 minutes. So it's almost half. It's about half of what the thing was telling us. So basically, that's because it's so close to the lens that we need to decrease the exposure. The light effectively is very bright coming through the camera. So that's one part of, the exposure. When you're putting your paper in, just place it inside, stuck down onto here. Put it in. It looks pink. If you're doing it in subdued lighting, it looks like this. Don't be concerned too much. That's how it looks. And chemicals will normally take that out. You put it in the device. Let's just put this in. You close it up. What I tend to do is then I will tape it up, the whole object, just to seal out any residual light that there might be. I'm ready to make my exposure. So that's my camera loaded and ready to go. Okay, so just to summarize, you need a box that is light tight. If you feel there's little cracks of light in it, you can see it on the inside, then just tape them up. You need to cut an aperture out to place the silver foil over, tape the silver foil down, make a pinhole, cover it up with your lens cap, put your material inside, tape it up, and you're ready to go. Okay? If you need any further instructions on that, then please do let me know. Now, some of you may have access to darkrooms and some of you may not, but please don't let that be an incumbent to what you're doing. If you want, you can get materials and you can send them back to us. What I would do is I will provide you with the paper in a light type pack. And if you need help with this, it will come in a box. When you receive it, you will need to unload and load the paper in the dark, okay? And once you've made your exposure, you need to then put it back in this and return it to hospital rooms, and I will process it for you. Another way of doing it is very simply not using chemicals. This is a very sort of risky, to some extent, process, but not unachievable. It does mean you would have to have access to a camera to take photographs of the resultant image, or a scanner, so like a flatbed scanner or something like that, so you can scan it. Because what happens when you take the material out of the camera, it will just slowly degrade and get darker and darker and darker, and you will lose it. So you've got to actually capture the moment once it's out of the receptacle. What I'm quickly going to do is I'm going to drill a hole in this so that I can, I'm going to go down here, hang on. So what I've done,
hang on. Yeah.
I've just drilled a hole in this tin can. That's not my pinhole, that's actually just so as I can get another piece of foil over the tin. So I will wrap the tin around, get some tape. If you use a beer can, or like I was saying, a soft drinks can, they're thinner, and actually you can just get a drawing pin through the surface of those, so you don't have to sort of resort to drilling anything. But I kind of like the look of this can, sort of lunch, tin of beans. All I've done here is cover over the hole I drilled with a piece of silver foil, and with the drawing pin I can feel where the hole is roughly, and I will just, I'm not sure if you can even see that, but it is there, it's a pinhole. And what I'll do, this is actually some paper, so I'm going to put this outside. This piece of photographic printing paper that I would use in a darkroom. I'm going to place this inside the can. I've also got a lid from a glass tin. I'm going to place that on top, and then very simply seal the tin with my black masking tape. Therefore, that's a really quick camera. I'll leave this outside for about a day. And after a day, after 24 hours, I will go out, I will take it apart, and I won't process this paper. I won't have to use any chemicals. I will try to dry process it simply by letting the exposure to light do all the work. And once that's complete, when I take it out, I will quickly take a photograph of it and see what I get. So I'm going to pop this somewhere and leave it. And then pop back. So that will stay out for 24 hours. I'll be quite interested to see what it does. I'll quickly show you my darkroom. And I hope I can do this without so you getting a huge, gigantic picture of my face. Right, for those of you, so this is my darkroom. I'm very fortunate, and I sort of finished this off during lockdown. Actually, I needed to stay active and keep myself going, so I decided to sort of finish everything off. I have got lots of trays and all the sort of things that you accumulate over years and years of working in photography. But I also use things like household, like food trays for processing small prints, rather than exhorting to making using lots of chemicals. So try and find a way and a means that is both, you know, practical but economical at the same time. So, you know, you don't always need a darkroom. And as I say, if you feel that you won't have access to those things, then please don't let that put you off, because you can always, you know, send things to me and I will do it for you, or even sort of guide you through the process.
So Steve, we're it's about 25 to 3. So do you want to talk about the Camera Obscura?
Perfect timing. Right, I hope this is all being clear so far. So Camera Obscuras have been around, we reckon, since about the 14th century. And we always used to marvel at some of the great masters of how intricate things used to be. Their paintings and their drawings were so accurate in terms of scale and perspective and those sort of things. And what it is, they're using camera obscuras, which use light very much like a camera does. The light penetrates through a lens and then reflects itself off another material, mostly like in this case, a translucent material or semi-opaque material like this, or okay, another good one is actually tracing paper is perfect in terms of that, because there's a certain rigidity to it as well. But what we will do is we'll make a camera obscura out of a cereal packet and the inside carton. I'm not sure what these plastic probably. First things first is make sure that it's sealed. I'm not sure, can you see on here? There's a bit of a gap. Yeah. You need to seal that off, like anything else. The protecting the image from light is really, really important. So what I'll use is a piece of gaffer tape. Push down on the box like that. Yeah, I was never very academic at school. I knew I had to be doing something with my hands. It was, I never really got that. But I would say that I've actually used more maths, physics, and the sciences in my work than ever thought I would imagine I would. But I do like very practical things. And I like the idea of actually repurposing objects. So, sealed this. First of all, get your trusty needle, your pen, and not halfway up, but about, I would say, I don't know, 3/5 of the way up, just over halfway in the middle. Poke your hole in, give it a wiggle. The larger the hole, the more light that penetrates in. And you can experiment. If you sort of look through it and you think, oh, well, that's not working, just make the hole slightly bigger. Obviously, it's more difficult to make the hole slightly smaller, but I'd like to see you give it a go. Next, so that's it. I've sealed off the bottom end of it. I've made a pinhole. Can you sort of see that roughly? But just above the halfway point. There you go. Next, don't need film for this. This is just a viewing thing. I once went out to the Middle East and had about 50 or so teenagers walking around the desert. We were doing this inclusive sort of workshop, and we had all these kids wandering around with shoe boxes and cereal boxes looking at wildlife. So I cut the bottom off just to give me a bit more play on it, really. And what I do is I tend to what I hear is here, I'm making it slightly larger than the box. Okay, I'll do it from this side. Maybe I'll put the camera down. You see, I'm making it so where the back of the box will be, and this, I'm making this slightly larger. Obviously, be as accurate as you possibly can be. I get a bit excited. I sort of look at things and think, oh, what can I make out of that? Okay, so what I've ended up is this hook. Slice the hook, or if it works, pull it apart. So as you'll see, this is slightly larger than the actual box. Okay. You need to make the width of it slightly smaller than the box. So say about 10 millimeters or so, because it needs to fit inside and not go side to side with it. So we're looking at about that sort of size. Right, so if you can see this from above, what I've got is a rectangle of material which is slightly smaller than the width of the box, but it'll be slightly deeper. Whoops, slightly deeper that way. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to measure how far this is going to go inside the box. So I just tend to mark it with a pen. It just gives me a guide as to how far to slot it in. Okay, that's what I've ended up with. Next, well, this handy, it's got a dotted line already. Maybe they're, yeah, I was going to use it. What I do is I'll mark again on here, slightly larger. Now, the distance away from the actual pinhole can also, relate to, how clear or what the focal length is. The focal length is basically whether my hand is in focus or whether that chair over there is in focus. That's that focal distance, the distance away, where the point of focus will be. If I cut this carefully along here, what I've done is I've created a slot which will allow me to push paper into the box to the guides. Remember, I drew where the lines were because I know where that is going to do it, and I hold it up and I can see roughly where it's going to go. What I might do, because it's quite curly, is I might give this a bend. Okay, so next, hold it up. Just check that things are where you want them to be. Yeah, I can see that coming through. It's going to be difficult for me to show you actually what I can see from this end. But try it, before you sort of fix things down, see how it works for you, and just keep assessing it as you go along. And if it doesn't work, just keep trying. Don't feel like you have to get it right the first time. I often think that my joy of creating is actually as much about the process and as much as it is about the result. And And I think it's something that we can all learn from, that it's not always the outcome that is important, it's the kind of journey along the way. And it's a bit like that in life, I think. You learn an awful lot by doing and by experiencing things. And it's not always about... I've got a friendly Robin, he's just popped up. I normally keep the door open. He's like looking at me thinking, why is the door not open? I don't know if you're all fortunate enough to have gardens, but we've currently got squirrels and hedgehogs and all sorts of things. I think lockdown's been great for nature. Instead of giving us a bit of breathing space, but I also think a bit of breathing space for nature as well. Right, so what I'm doing inside is I'm putting a small bit of tape inside the box to basically pin down the bottom of my screen. I'll try and show you what it is I've done. So it's just to make it... I'm not sure how much of that you'll see, but well, it's a lot stranger than this, but hang on, there we go. Right. Can you see? I don't know if you can see in there down the bottom. So the screen is actually now in line with the plane of my pinhole. And this screen acts almost like a reflector. And what you find is that if you look through and you use the edges of the box to shield your face, you can look outside. And what you get is an inverted view, because the light is being flicked by the pinhole, and you get an inverted view. And I always find such joy in just looking at a really simple thing like that. It's going to be hard for me to sort of show you, but what can you see where I've done that? The light is coming through this pinhole and reflecting off, or through this piece of screen, and it's inverting it as it goes. It's a very simple camera obscura, and it's what these artists used to use. They used to use a camera obscura to reflect the image, and they would plot, you know, on their canvas or on their board that image, and it was always upside down. So it's, you know, and it's just a really simple and joyful way of using a piece of stuff. You can go one stage further, or another stage further. Here's one I made from a packaging roll. I cut the end off and I covered it in silver foil, and I put a hole in this end and made it light tight. And then what I've done here on the opposite side is I've used the equivalent of this serial material. I used some tracing paper and created my obscura element on this side. And what I would then do is just simply, to block out the light a little bit,
we've had some really lovely comments, Steve. So someone has said that
people are getting bored.
No, we've had, so someone has said they're going to give this a go and try taking a photo of the squirrel that comes into their kitchen window.
Brilliant.
Someone said they've never understood the camera obscura, but you've explained it brilliantly, which is really nice. Just as a sort of general housekeeping, we've come to the end of the sort of advertised time for the session. So if you do have to leave us, people that are joining, if you do have to leave right now, we're going to send an email to everyone that registered with a link about the photo paper and the exposure calculator and where to send your images. But if not, Steve, are you happy to continue with the Periscope until maybe sort of...
Yes, I've got one with the magnifying glass as well. I'll very quickly show some people. This is an image I made with a Tetrapak as well from my own garden. So if you want to have a quick look at that. And if you are fortunate and you do, you know, when you experiment and you get everything, what you find is the objects are reversed. They're back to front because of the way that the camera works. But that was taken with a Tetrapak. And it was a 30 seconds long exposure on a half cloudy, half sunny day. so yeah, I'd reiterate what Natalie said, is that if you do want to continue, if you want to get some materials and things, then please let us know, and I'm happy to sort of advise or to supply materials, and then you can return them to me. So if you haven't got materials of your own, please don't let that put you off. And even using an Obscura is just a fun way to look differently at the world around you, using household objects.
We've just had a quick question about the photo paper for the pinhole cameras. Can you cut it down, or is it best to leave it as it is when you're putting it inside your Tetrapak or your tin?
That's a good question. What I tend to do is I will buy an oversized pack, possibly normally some of that, and I cut it in half. So yes, of course, you can, as you would in normal darkroom printing, you can cut the paper down. I would advise doing it in as low light a condition as you possibly can, but you can just rip it if you want. You can just fold it in half in the dark and rip it, or you do something. Yes, in answer to your question, you can, no problem at all. And I tend to do that for this kind of projects. I will buy larger pieces of paper and cut them down to size to fit inside the receptacle.
Great. Well, yeah, it'd be great to see about the Periscope.
Yeah, so this is a kind of Periscope projector. It's sort of made up of a variety of things, one of which is a magnifying glass. This is a 10 centimeter diameter magnifying glass, and I won't get too much into optics and things, but it's important to get use materials that are suitable. But what I find is a 10 centimeter diameter magnifying glass. Glass magnifying glass is ideal, and what I've done is I've just broken the handle off, so that's all that is. What's also brilliant is actually really cheap reading glasses from a variety of different outfits. So basically, if you've broken your I break mine all the time, reading spectacles, you can use one of those lenses as a periscope or projector lens and get a +1. You get different sort of what's the strength for prescriptions. A +1 is actually brilliant for that kind of thing. So you can get relatively cheap lenses, and they're cheaper than a magnifying glass, but you can go online and you can get these relatively inexpensively as well. So this effectively is our lens. Look at this one. So like this, I've got this, and what this is going to do is act as both in projecting light. So I've gone back to the Tetrapaks, but you can use all manner of things for these. The idea is that you've got two devices that move in and out to give you focal length, okay? So you will need to make two boxes, one with the receiving end for the Camera Obscura end, and one for the glass end. So, but I can use, there's a shoe, is it a shoe box? I don't know what it was. But yes, I would stick it on the front of here, and I'd have another box going in and out at the same time. But let's use the Tetrapak because we've been using those earlier. The first thing that I would do is cut the ends off. Well, cut the end off of one Tetrapak box, and you tape on a piece of tracing paper or packaging material so that it's slightly oversized, and then you tape it on all the way around. And what you end up with is a box that looks like that. Okay, so that's one element. The second element is, again, you cut the top of one of the boxes. You'll see here that I'm actually using, this is a pinhole camera and part of the projector. So you cut the top off of one end of it, but don't cut the end off of this one. Just unpick it and fold it out, because what this does, it ends up as a receiver for the magnifying glass, okay? So what I do is tip it up. The Tetrapak was inside the magnifying glass. Can you see that? It's not on the outside. The pack's gone inside, and that gives you better hold. And then what I do is I'll tape it all the way around. Like this. I'm kind of rushing it, but take your time. It's as much about the activity as it is anything else. What I love about pinhole photography and these sort of obscuras is you don't quite know what you're going to get. And I do think in a craft like mine, like photography, it's can get rather prescriptive and actually predictable. And the expectations are always very high. With something like this, it's so unpredictable and so unsure of what you're actually going to get. The joy is actually in the aberration and the flaw and the fault than it is actually in perfection. And I enjoy that about photography a lot. It's the idea of the unpredictability and the not knowing. And I think often with what we do, it's always kind of, the expectation is that it's very sort of perfect, and nothing's perfect, as we all know. Nothing in life is perfect. So we have two objects, one with a lens, one with a screen. The light will come through the lens and it will go onto the screen at the back. If you want, get another piece of cardboard and create a hood. That can often work as well. Or simply just, you can make it even longer. You can make, let's just put this in apart. Thing is, it's not. Make it as long as you want, really. So what you're doing is building up. And what these do is they slip in and out. Can you see that? So you can actually move it in and out. Now I can see the focal length from here. So I'm focusing on a bowl of flowers outside my studio, which are about 30 feet away, and they're in perfect focus. I wish I could, let me, oh, I was going to take a photograph on my phone. Well, I'll take a photograph, I'll send it to Natalie, and then she can share it.
We will. We'll share it on our Instagram page, which is @_hospitoriums.
So I get a bit carried away. It's like, look at that. Anyway, so you just make something very simply from magnifying glass, some Tetrapak cartons, a piece of cereal packet wrapper, and some sticky back plastic. And I think that things like that are just, in terms of their creativity and what you can achieve, this is like a telephoto lens. It's almost, yeah, it works really, really beautifully, and everything is just transformed. So wow. That I would highly recommend. Now, the thing that you can also do, which is, you can buy these off the shelf, but I prefer to make mine, is a magnifying glass projector for your phone. Now, if you have a smartphone, remember to lock the screen so that it doesn't sort of keep rotating as you put it in the back. But I'll show you what I mean by it. We're sort of running out of time, I take it.
We're running over a little bit, but
okay. So this is a cardboard box. I've cut the aperture out on here, and I would stick the magnifying glass inside, or on the outside of it, like so. And what this does is, again, it creates a receptacle for light to penetrate in. Again, the box will have to be made light tight. And at the other end of another box, say, what you would do is you would place your stick your smartphone to it, either using, you know, tape or something like that. And when you shine it on its brightest setting, the light shines through here, outside of the box and the magnifying glass, and onto a wall. Now, what works well is about a 2 foot distance, 3 foot distance from a wall or a flat object. Walls, strangely as well, but they absorb light very easily. So what some people use is maybe like a linen cloth or a dust cloth or something to project onto. They seem to work very much better than a blank wall. But it's very easy to do, and all you're doing is using the utility of your smartphone and the actual magnifying element of the glass and the box, and because it's in an encased dark space, it works just like a projector. So you're able to not only absorb light in through a magnifying glass for you to view through a camera obscura, you're allowed to emit light. You know, you emit light through the magnifying glass to project an image from inside.
Well, so that means that we can, if we go into lockdown, we can all have our own mini projector.
Or movies.
Or movie night, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Steve. It's been such an amazing session, so much to take away. And for everyone joining, we're going to follow up this afternoon with links on everything that Steve's talked about. So that is the exposure calculator, the link about where you can contact us about the camera paper, and everything else, and also a link where you can upload your images. So thanks again for joining us. We're going to take a 1 week break, 1 week hiatus, and then we're going to be back with our autumn winter term of programming. So please we'll keep you posted. Follow us on Instagram, have a look on Eventbrite, and we look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks. But thanks again, Steve. Really great, and yeah, we'll see you all soon. Thanks. Bye.